that was the thing for me when I went to see this in the movie theater. I left going, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like that before in my life. In my life, and that's the thing that's always going to stick with me whenever I discuss the Matrix with people. It's a must watch. It's a must
Yeah,
watch if you're a lover of film. So
yeah, yeah. This is one of those movies that, like you said, if you're a lover of film, absolutely must watch.
hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah,
Well, here we are.
I'm giddy. I'm so excited.
Alrighty. So we have done many movies since we started this podcast up here. Ricardo and I got to speaking, and I think it might be time for us to start going towards franchises if we can.
Mhm.
And we've already taken a look at a few franchises because some directors focused on franchises. We talk about Christopher Nolan and the Dark Knight trilogy. We have to talk about Zack Snyder and his role in the Snyderverse, just to mention a few. But there's a standalone franchise that we haven't touched yet, and this year would mark 25 years since the first movie came out. So we're going to get started here, and then we can talk about that a little bit. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie was directed by the Wachowskis. It was released March 31st of 1999. Today, the Panel Bros are going to be doing a breakdown for The Matrix.
Listen, I was so excited when we were talking about the idea of franchises, and you and I were going back and forth with franchises, and it got to the Matrix, and it got quiet for a little bit, and we are both thinking, and you were like, that's what we're doing. And I was so overjoyed to talk about this movie. This movie came out in 1999. I was 13. Excuse me. I was 13 years old. And I remember having my mind just blown the first time I watched it. And the fact that I can rewatch it today in 2024 and still get that amazing feeling that I'm watching something truly special in cinema in itself is incredible. Like, I can't wait to discuss this movie and everything it's meant to me, it's meant to you. Like, it is just a phenomenal film to talk about.
So I remember in 2019, they did 20th anniversary showings all across the country and the world. And I went.
Have to.
I
Got to.
went. I went to a Dolby Digital Theater with some nice seating, and it was packed wall to wall. It was packed wall to wall, and I had a great time. And now 5 years later, we're here at 25 years, and I did not go to see it again this year, but there were plenty of 25th anniversary showings this entire year. As of this recording, it's November 2024, so the year's almost over. So we had to get it in before the end of the year to celebrate 25 years of The Matrix.
Absolutely. Like, there's a reason why I think this is one of those movies that will continue to get those showings again theatrically. I think it's a testament to just how good this movie is, and to try to get as many people as possible to see it in that aspect, in the theater, on the big screen. It's look, man, it's what I call a chef's kiss.
Yeah, and I will say this on that rewatch when I went 5 years ago, the 20th anniversary, it was not a quiet showing.
Everybody's seen it, so we're having a good time, right?
We know what's coming, we know where it's gonna go, but the theater was packed wall to wall, and there were multiple showings too. But for the one that I went to, it was packed wall to wall. We were cheering. There was a applause at once the credits hit. It was great.
See, and that's so awesome because, when it comes to seeing a movie for the first time, sometimes there's cheer moments, but sometimes you kind of just want to get so drawn into it and just take it all out it's coming. And I think that on a movie like The Matrix, when you get to rewatch it and have that experience again, like you mentioned, we've all seen it. Now we're here to really just have a great time with it and have that collective consciousness and cheering and clapping, because there's plenty of those moments in this movie. Like, if I had watched this movie today with a group of friends, there would have been moments of us hitting each other on the shoulder, like, my God, do you remember how cool this was? And it's just, it's so great that that movie can invoke that type of emotion. It doesn't matter how many times you see it. So if they have any more anniversary shows, I would strongly recommend, if you've never seen this movie in the theater, take that opportunity to do it.
Absolutely. So we're going to get started with our breakdown here. So the movie opens. It's nighttime, and we're here at an abandoned hotel, and we have a police squad corner Trinity, played by Carrie Ann Moss, and there's a fight sequence, a gun sequence, something that happens throughout the entire movie, and she overpowers them with some superhuman abilities. And the Wachowskis don't waste any time going into showing us what this movie is going to be about. So let me pull that up here.
And, yes, I remember going to the theater, obviously, and seeing the scene. It's a great cold open because it's a great way to let us know exactly what we're in store for. It doesn't go too big right away, but we get to see this awesome use of technology and camera usage and blocking, and we get this amazing sequence where they're building her up before we even get into the building, right? Yeah. Like, the cops are like, "What are you worried about?" When Agent Smith and the other agents roll up, the cops like, "We got it taken care of. We can handle a little girl." You know what I mean? And Agent Smith is like, "No, your officers are already dead." You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and like, yo, they're building this up, and we get this moment with her, and we get this great sequence, and we get that moment that we've seen, parodied in other movies, replicated in other movies. She jumps in the air, hits this great pose, and there's that pause. And the camera just kind of swoops around, and you get this, almost half rotation around the entire scene. And she delivers the kick. Guy goes flying through the wall. And right from that moment, we literally hit the ground running.
Yeah. And it's a great moment. She jumps up and she hits this pose before she kicks him. And this happens multiple times throughout the movie. But this is the first time it happened in the movie where you sit there and go, I've never seen that in a movie before.
Yes. Yes. This is where I'm telling you, this is the moment. We've talked about this, and I'm going to repeat this probably 3 to 4 times during this whole thing. There are movies before The Matrix, and there's movies after The Matrix. And this was just, again, a tip of the iceberg that we were going to continue to see things we had never seen before.
Yeah, and I believe I've seen how this feat is obtained. I think they set up cameras all around the subject, still shot cameras, if I'm not mistaken.
Tons of cameras.
And it's a picture from each different angle, and then when you put it all together, it looks like a camera's rotating around the subject.
It's so
360
good.
degrees.
So good.
Amazing special effect. Amazing. So she flees, pursued by the police and a group of suited agents capable of similar superhuman feats. She answers a ringing public phone and she vanishes. Computer programmer Thomas Anderson, known by his hacking alias Neo, this is our lead, played by Keanu Reeves, is puzzled by repeated online encounters with the phrase, "The Matrix." Trinity contacts him and tells him a man named Morpheus has the answers Neo seeks. So we're moving forward with the story here, and we find out we have Neo here. He's a hacker, and some people show up at his door looking for some software. And this happens just throughout the entire movie, just some foreshadowing. The character, he takes the software from him, and he says, "You're my savior, man. You're my own personal Jesus Christ."
Yeah, dude, I'll tell you, there's a lot of that in this movie. I mean, he is the one, you know what I mean? Like, he's going to bring, peace and whatnot. Yeah, absolutely.
And he read a message that said follow the white rabbit, and then he sees a tattoo of the white rabbit on the woman. So he goes to the club and so forth.
Because he wasn't going to go. Like, he's kind of just like, nah, it's okay. And then he notices the white rabbit And he's like, wait a minute. I literally just got the notification, follow the white rabbit. And he's like, okay. And this is where he's going to meet our girl, Trinity.
Yeah, so they have a conversation, and just things just don't work out. He doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't work out, and we move on to the next day here, and he's still leery about the situation. Obviously,
Yeah.
he doesn't know who to trust here. So he's at work the next day, and a team of agents and the police, led by Agent Smith, played by Hugo Weaving,
Mm-hmm.
they arrive at Neo's workplace in search of Neo. Though Morpheus attempts to guide Neo to safety, we have a phone there.
Mm-hmm.
Neo surrenders rather than risk a dangerous escape. So the agents offer to erase Neo's criminal record, all of the hacking, in exchange for his help with locating Morpheus, who they claim is a terrorist. When Neo refuses to cooperate, they fuse his mouth shut, pin him down, and then implant a robotic bug into his abdomen. This happens several times throughout the movie, where we get a little bit of horror.
Yes, thank you for saying it. Because I was like, I hope we talk about how the movie introduces horror elements, because it was, again, I was 13 and I was like, hold on, wait, is this a horror movie? Because I was not expecting a horror movie, guys. And we get this sequence where Neo's kind of being not about it, right? He's not about helping the agents. He flips off the bird, and they're kind of just like, oh really? And he was like, yeah. And he goes, I know my rights and this and that. And he goes, oh really? Well, what's the use of that if you don't have a mouth, if you can't speak? And then you see his lips just merge together, and it's a horrifying look, because he tries to open his lips and you see like the flesh kind of melting together. And it's horrible, and there's a huge panic. He runs up against the wall, they slam him on the table, and of course, not only is it like a bug, it is almost like an actual bug. Like, it grows like tentacles. It's crawling up and down his sternum. I'm like, what is that? I don't like this at all. And just in horror fashion, actually enters his body through his belly button. And I was like, good God, this is terrifying. Like, just, I'm loving it, but it's terrifying.
So as the bug enters his body through his belly button, he wakes up. So, was that all a dream? Was it not? We'll see. He wakes up from what he believes it to be a nightmare. So soon after, Trinity takes Neo to meet Morpheus, and she removes the bug from Neo. So they pick him up, and they're driving him in a car, and they pull a gun on him. It's like, we got to be careful. And there's so much mystery surrounding the situation. He's like, why do you have a gun on me if like you think I'm able to help you? And we will find out why later on. But Trinity has this device. She ends up getting the bug out of him. It's disgusting. It pulls it right.
Dude, she pulls out this, I don't know what this thing is, but it's this weird contraption, and it's got like a monitor on it. It's got a trigger, and she puts on his stomach. She goes, I just need you to relax. And these prongs come out, and they grab a hold of his waist, and you can see it going through his body. And the character known as Switch is like, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it. She goes, I'm not going to lose it. She pushes it. There's some like electric shock. It sucks it out of his stomach. And Neo, rightfully so, freaks out. He's just like, that's real. And then they just kind of toss it out the window. And again, it's that body horror. And it just bothered me so much. I was like, because belly button.
And you saw the blood, because it came out of his body, and then I guess adrenaline, like he's too shocked to because he suffered a wound there. There's like something burst out of his stomach. But so So we meet Morpheus, and he says the infamous line that we get from the trailers. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. And I wanted to do a callback here, because that was the marketing for this movie before the movie came out. The trailers, and correct me if I'm mistaken, they didn't show anything from the movie. All you saw was the green lettering. You got audio. You saw who was going to be in it, but you didn't see actual footage from the movie. And at the very end, you would just see, yeah, excuse me, you would hear Lawrence Fishburne drop that line. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. There was a website,
What
whatisthematrix.com.
is
Like
it?
there,
There was a great marketing around it because I remember my cousin was really big into coding. My older cousin was big into coding and things like that. And he wasn't a hacker by any means, but he liked the culture of it, if that makes any sense. Because I remember, years prior, the movie Hackers had come out, and there was this idea of like all computers and technology and everything else. And I remember him like trying to explain it to me because I'm like, what is this movie? Like, what are these numbers? And he's like, oh, that's code, and code is used to do this and do that. And there was this intrigue there. And as you mentioned, like I knew who was in it, but I wasn't exactly sure what the movie was. Because again, even at the theater, there were moments where I'm like, what is this movie? Like I wasn't sure because the trailers did such a good job at remaining vague and not really spoiling major plot points from the movie, which nowadays, you feel like that happens all the time. Like nowadays, you're kind of like, oh, like a trailer will reveal a major plot point, where the Matrix did such a good job. And, what is the Matrix, and going to websites and things of that nature. And remember, you know, around this time, the internet was still kind of a new concept to us.
right.
Everyone didn't have a computer at their home. It was a luxury to have one. If you got to use one at school, was another luxury, et cetera, et cetera. So this idea that a movie was centered around something that we weren't, I can speak for myself at least, I wasn't entirely educated on it. It was very intriguing to me, and it was very cool. And I love that they used this for marketing, the idea of like, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. What a great marketing, because now I'm like, well, I want to see it. Like, what is the Matrix? I remember going into the theater going, I want to know what the Matrix is.
Yeah, and after the movie was out, that's when we started getting the trailers. That now people have seen it, people are talking about it. And now we're going to start showing the people that are still on the fence why you have to come see this movie, and then you get those not all of them, but a lot of these iconic shots in the trailers after the fact. But I remember before the movie came out, I do not remember seeing anything from the movie, so I did want to mention that. So.
And Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus is awesome in this little moment right here, where we get to meet him, and he's very mysterious. His jacket, the sunglasses that don't have any, I don't even know what you would call that. The part that goes on behind your ears, they're just lens, and it's so cool. And I'm like, what a great introduction of a character. And I'd like to say it's one of my favorite introductions to a character in cinema is Morpheus in this one scene.
Yeah, there's so many iconic choices too. You talk about those sunglasses that clip right to the bridge of the nose. I missed it earlier. The phone where you click and then the receiver comes out.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The black trench coats. There were so many different aesthetic choices that the Wachowskis went for.
The aesthetic choices and the body language of Lawrence Fishburne. He folds his arms behind his back.
Yeah.
Like that's like, I'm trying to do it right now, but he folds them behind his back. And again, it's little choices like that I'm like, oh man, like he just comes off different, like a different type of character. And it's really cool to watch.
So Morpheus offers Neo a choice between two pills. The red pill to reveal the truth about the Matrix, or the blue pill to make Neo forget everything and return to his former life. And you're gonna hear us say this throughout this entire breakdown here. Just so many iconic moments, scenes, and lines.
That shot right there.
It's what is it? You take the blue pill, you wake up. You take the red pill. I'll show you how far the rabbit hole goes.
Hole really goes. And again, like when you think of movies and iconic shots and iconic scenes, you can talk about the T-Rex scene in Jurassic Park. You can talk about scenes from The Exorcist, like iconic movies with iconic scenes. This is one of those that is still referenced today. Like I've seen this, whether it's in a meme, whether it comes down to just making a choice, but this is great. This is an amazing shot. This idea where you have this, this dual idea in a sense, where it's like, all right, the red pill would do this and the blue pill would do that, and the choice is yours. And you see the confliction in both. And what I love about it is that in the lens where you see he makes the choice, the one on the right there, it's almost like a completely different shot because both his arms are down. Like it's kind of insinuating like, here's a choice where you do nothing, and here is a choice where you do something. And I love the way that they did that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great shot, but that's such a great moment here. It's like he was making the biggest choice of his entire life, just between two pills here. And I do remember this ended up being like a talking point with people. Which pill would you have taken?
Yes, big one, big one.
We were we were just talk about it like, well, I mean, I don't know. Would you want to know? Would you not want to know? Like, and like if you went back, like what type of life would you want to live? And it's like so many different conversations.
It's a great conversation, because if you go in with the knowledge that Neo has up to this point, it's very ballsy and risky to take the red pill. It's very risky because, again, he does not know what he's in store for. On one hand, you can be comfortable. You can go back to that life. The red, you are taking a leap of faith. And usually when in real life, in reality, with hard choices that we're unsure, change can be very difficult for people. Sometimes change can be difficult for me. And sometimes being comfortable and feeling safer, it feels like the obvious choice. And this scene demonstrated that, because he's like, hey, you can go back to normal and wake up in your bed, live a normal life, or you can go here and I can show you how deep the rabbit hole really goes. And that curiosity, intrigue that Neo has was enough to push him. But I'll be honest with you, at that point, I don't know. I'll be like, wait, can you give me at least a hint on what we're gonna do? Nothing? Okay, all right, okay. But at that point, Neo is ready to take that jump.
So Neo takes the red pill, and his reality begins to distort until he awakens in a liquid-filled pod among countless other pods containing other humans. So let's break this down here. So
Yes.
he takes the pill, they sit him down, and then he sees the mirror, and then he touches the mirror, and it's like this metallic T2 like thing starts.
Yes.
Yeah, like the T2. Excuse me. Well, that's the movie, but the T1000, right? Just that metallic mercury like substance starts, and it's like, I feel cold. Why do I feel cold? And it starts coming all over him, and that's them signifying that he's quote unquote waking up.
Yeah, it
That's why.
was.
And then as it starts getting towards his neck, they have that one shot there where you see it go into his mouth, and it's scary. Some more horror
It's
here.
scary, dude. It's horrifying because it made me think about what it would be like to forcefully drown, because like he touches it and they're all monitoring him and he's very nervous, like they're monitoring his heart, et cetera, and Cypher's like, he's gonna pop, it's not looking good, you know what I mean? And they're like, no, he's fine. And he sees the mirror, which is broken originally, kind of come back together, and he's like, anybody see that? And they're kind of like feeling him out. And as you mentioned, he touched it and he gets this liquid metal. When it got up to his neck, I started to feel like, I don't like this feeling. I don't know if claustrophobic is the word, but it's that idea of like him not being able to control it. And he's like, I feel cold. Like, why do I feel cold? And they're like, okay, just relax. It's okay. Just relax. And I'm like, no, this isn't okay. And the sound design of when it goes down his throat.
Yeah, it's a great sound.
It almost sounds like a digital connection, for us, who grew up with internet dial-up and things of that nature. Computers used to make a lot of different types of sounds, not so much anymore, but back in the day they did. And there's this interesting sound choice that they make as it's going down, and as he's screaming, it's becoming more and more digital, and he wakes up in this just pod of ooze, and you're kind of just like, what? And this was the moment, and I told you this off air, I watched this with my dad. This was the moment my dad looked at me and was just like, what are we watching? And I was like, I don't know. Like, again, because the trailers were so vague, I was like, I don't know what's going on, but that made the movie that much more interesting.
It was a huge twist.
Yes.
Because they were hinting at things, but they didn't tell us what was going to happen. At this moment, you were just like, hold up.
Yep.
is
I still
like
didn't get it. I was like, I don't
it,
get
it
what's
was like,
happening.
whoa, 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 what is this? Like, what
Mhm.
is this? Like, and they would go on to explain what happened, but at the moment you were like, what is going on? Why are those people in those pods? Why
Yeah.
is the sky black? Where are all
Oh,
these
dude.
machines doing? And then we see him and he doesn't have any hair. He has all these tubes inside of
Mhm.
him. And actually, like, he had to pull something out of his throat, like
Yep.
kind of like when you see the movie, somebody wakes up and they pull the ventilator out,
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, and then all the tubes pop off, and then the machine comes and brings him by his neck. He goes down the chute, um, presumably to be discarded. We don't know, but
Yeah.
just the whole thing is just, once again, some more horror here,
Mhm.
both before he woke up and then especially after he woke up as well.
Yep, they use this scene to implement some like the score to play into the feel of dread and horror. And like he's looking around and you're just seeing like almost endless amounts of pods and these mechanical they are very similar to like mechanical insects, like the way they crawl and everything
Yeah.
else. And like you mentioned, it's just it's very scary. And at this point, we still don't understand, and we're not going to find out, and for a few more minutes when they bring him up into the ship.
So Neo is brought aboard Morpheus's flying ship, the Nebuchadnezzar. As Neo, for those of you that don't know, that's another biblical reference, just to let you
Hmm.
guys know. Um, as Neo recuperates from a lifetime of physical inactivity in the pod, in a movie where we have to have a suspension of disbelief, I appreciate the Wachowskis actually going about this realistically. What if you had
Hmm.
never used your body parts before? Um, you know, you never opened your eyes before. You've never breathed real air before. You've never walked. All of this never happened to you before. What would happen? And for the most part, they did a good job of showing that.
Hmm.
He couldn't stand because he's never walked before.
Hmm.
Um, so, and someone could say, "Oh, well, why was he able to move his arms? Can't babies flail their arms before they learn
Yeah,
how to walk?"
yeah.
So, if
And
you
we
want to,
also you also have to bring up like adrenaline exists, and like
true,
there's no Neo doesn't have there's not a lot of control happening when he wakes up in the pod. He wakes up and he's kind of just like, oh, like there's a lot of chaos happening all at
right?
once. And once that wears off, he's on the bed. He can barely move. He's extremely sore. He even asks, he goes, why do my eyes hurt? And Morpheus drops this line and
Mm,
he goes, because you've never used them before. And that's when I remember going like,
yeah.
oh,
Right. So in the Matrix, I guess this is the explanation. The brain remembers doing all that stuff, but
hmm,
now we're in the real world. Now the brain has to relearn how to do all that stuff, and I guess that's what they
hmm,
were trying to show us. And there's like a montage here where they're showing them operating on him, taking all the
hmm,
ports out, except for the one in the back of the head,
yep,
and we see him resting. The iconic line with Morpheus: "You haven't used your eyes before." Um, he's getting nutrients. He has an IV, like it's like, all right, so we're doing something here. Like we're letting this man recover for a little bit. And we know time
oh yeah,
passed because we could see the hair starting to grow back on his head.
yep,
So we know time passed. It wasn't
yep.
just like an overnight thing.
Yeah, and they had prods all over his body just to stimulate his muscles, just to keep
Yes.
stimulating his muscles because he was going to be bedridden for a while. And they were like, all right, we have to stimulate his muscles. And they're kind of like sending these shocks to his body. And you see them taking him out and there's blood and whatnot. And you're like, oh man. And like you said, you can notice that there is a time differential because you start to see the hair in his head grow out.
Yeah. So shout out to the Wachowskis for doing that. It's like, hey, we're not just gonna have this man wake up and be able to do everything that he needs to do.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna show you in this huge science fiction movie, we're gonna have a little hint of realism here to
Yeah.
show you that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
appreciated that. So, Morpheus explains the history. In the early 21st century, humanity had developed intelligent machines before war broke out between the two sides. So, the AI, so to speak,
Yeah.
became self aware. And that's what ended up happening. After humans blocked the machines' access to solar energy, because that's how the machines were getting their energy, solar.
Mhm.
So what we did to counteract that was we blocked out the sun intelligently.
Terrible idea.
Right. Um, the machines responded by enslaving humankind and harvesting their bioelectric power while keeping their minds pacified in the Matrix. So,
Mm-hmm.
long story short, there was a war that broke out between the two machines. This is an ongoing uh, theme in film. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if the machines wake up, you know, Terminator, Blade Runner, we can go on and on. You know, so but this was the Wachowskis' spin on it. But surprise, they won. They beat us,
Yeah. Yes.
and they enslaved us to, you know, to become like a power source for them.
Yeah, and you get Morpheus drops another line that sticks with me. He was like, humans are no longer born; they're grown, like they're harvested. And you have this shot, man, of just endless fields of human beings being harvested for their energy. And it's a really, really dark take because, like you mentioned, we lost. Like, do you know how bad things must have gotten that the human species decided we have to block out the sun? Like,
Ugh,
that has to be last resort level, and it still didn't work. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
at on our last feat of strength, we took out something that we desperately need on Earth and got rid of it, and we still lost. And it's a very dark scene.
I would take this moment to let everyone know if you've never seen the Animatrix,
Yeah.
please watch that when you get a chance. There are it's an anthology,
Hmm.
and two anthologies in there are called the Second Renaissance, Part One and Part Two. Some people could argue that a prequel to the Matrix would you could have enough. There's enough material to do an
Oh yeah.
entire movie if you
Hmm.
wanted to do it that way. So this kind of picks up after everything that happened, but in this in the Animatrix, you get that explanation
Hmm.
of how things happened and where things went before the Matrix happened. It serves as a prequel to the Matrix, and in all the other vignettes you see I don't want to spoil it, but you see some notable characters from the
Hmm.
Matrix as well in all those little vignettes. So little shout out to the Animatrix there.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get that, you know, just another iconic line, and they wanted to turn us into this, you know, and he holds up a
Yes.
battery, and it was just like, wow, what? Oh, it's like, man, we lost.
Yeah,
You
dude.
know, this is all we are now to them.
We
How
we're
sad is that?
we have become an energy source. Like that's it. You know, usually when you get some sort of there are films that have, you know, a dark ending, if you will. We've seen those movies before. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. There are movies out there where we lose in the end. And it's interesting to have a movie start up from the beginning. It's already over. Like you have Neo living in the real world, completely oblivious to what's happening. And so many people, you know, they constantly remind us that there are so many people that are quote unquote asleep still within the matrix and have no idea what's happening in this real world. And all we are to them at this point is just a battery. And it's a great moment.
Yeah. So the Matrix is described as a shared simulated reality modeled at the world as it was in 1999. And I believe Morpheus tells him we're actually in 2199.
Mhm.
So they did that on purpose. That's the year the movie was released. But just letting you know, it's actually closer to 2199. And in the years following, the remaining free humans took refuge in the underground city of Zion. And Morpheus and his crew are a group of rebels who hack into the Matrix to quote unquote unplug enslaved humans and recruit them.
Mhm.
So Neo had already been jacked into the Matrix to be told this entire story and to be shown all of this information. And he's like, nope, it's not real. Don't believe
Yep.
it. I want out. So they unjack him,
Yeah.
and he pukes. He passes out. You know, Neo loses it when he's told the truth here. I have these notes here.
Mhm.
And despite all their faith in him, it didn't matter. In the middle of this entire movie, which is a huge suspension of disbelief, we have another realistic moment. This reaction from
Oh
Neo.
yeah, yeah,
Imagine being
100%.
told that your entire world does not exist.
It does not exist. Every memory that you've ever had, every relationship that you've ever had, your family, your loved ones, your job, your school, everything that you've ever known does not exist. It would essentially be enough to drive someone crazy
Right.
because the mind can't distinguish. Morpheus brings up, it goes, how would you have you ever had a dream that felt so real that you couldn't distinguish between the dream world and the real world? What if you couldn't wake up from that dream world? And it's similar to that. And it's as if, what we're doing right now, this moment right now is real to me. I'm in it, I'm living in it. If you were to tell me tomorrow I take a pill and you'd be like, oh, everything you've known before today is not real, it does not exist, you do not know the people that's a lot to handle. So the idea that all that hits him at once, and he's like, no, I don't believe it, I want out, take me out. And even in the road, he's like, no, get away from me. And there's a panic, and he throws up and he passes out, rightfully so. I don't know anybody in their right frame of mind who could just accept that and go, okay. Like, no,
Right.
no, that's a
And he had an
lot to handle.
idea that things were off because of who he is. Do you ever
Mhm.
had a dream you couldn't wake up from? It's not real. Like he had an idea, but he had no idea it would go this far.
Mm-mm.
So,
No, this is deep.
yeah.
This is deep.
Um,
And it's not just that. It's being told, "Oh, by the way, we lost." Like
yeah.
we like you're being told that hundreds of thousands, billions of people died in this massive war with AI, and now we're harvested. What? Like, yeah, like nobody can handle that.
So obviously, there's a little part that is it too late to go back? Yeah, it's too late to go
Oh
back.
yeah. Dude, I would have asked. I 100% would have
Yeah.
asked, is it too late to go back? Like, he goes, yeah. But if you could, would you want to? Like, that's a good question.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a good question.
So obviously Neo needs to get some training if he's going to help them win
Mhm,
in this ongoing battle. And we get introduced to the idea of uploading skills through
mhm,
the jack in the back of the head here. We have Dozer here doing that with him, and I believe he said 10 hours straight of
mhm.
learning skills and mostly kung fu and martial arts. And well, I gave away the line here, but Morpheus walks in and Keanu just looks at him and says, "I know kung fu."
I know kung fu. Like,
Yeah.
it's this sequence. Okay, this was the first time in the movie where I was kind of like, all right, this is kind of cool. The idea of the Matrix is horrifying, right? Like, everything that we've learned up to this point is terrifying. Like, I don't want any of that to be real. But then the idea that it was like, hey, you can learn an entire skill set. We're just gonna plug you into the Matrix, download a file, and you're gonna know everything about this skill set instantly. And it was like, wait, I kind of like that. Like, that's pretty cool. And like you said, just hours and hours of training and training. And I love the line, man. I love that I know kung fu. Like, it's so great. It's so great.
Yeah, and you had to have known Keanu did that on purpose for it to be a funny moment. He
It's
he
so
he knows
great.
the way he sounds. He knows how he
Mhm.
can deliver things in a way because we've seen him do interviews. He doesn't sound like that in his
No,
interviews,
it's
So
great. I mean,
he
I mean the line the line itself lends itself to be comical.
yeah.
Like, I know kung fu. It's the way it's said at that moment. It's like, I know kung fu. Like, it's so good.
Yeah, yeah. Show me,
Show me. It's so good, dude. It's so good.
So we get into the training program, and this is between Morpheus and Neo. We
Mhm.
get some insane fight choreography, and this would go on to be a staple of the Matrix franchise. Just amazing martial arts sequences over and over and
Yes.
over again. But this sequence in particular, um, just showing us of what we're in for, and
Mhm.
the crew can see it on the screen. They
It's
all
so funny.
run.
Oh, when they all run from the room, they're like, "Yo, Morpheus is fighting Neo," and everyone just like stops what they're doing,
Yeah,
and it reminded me of what it was like to be in high school, and you would hear a fight, and everybody would run. Like, what? It was so funny. It was a great look. The movie also has these great moments of levity and humor, and everyone just kind of runs up to go see. And as you mentioned, this fight sequence is so great. And I told you off the air that I was talking to my buddy. I'll give him a shout out, Anthony Scanish, and we
Yeah,
were
yeah.
talking
Shout out to Anthony
because
Scanish. Yeah.
because you know your boy's a martial artist, and I was like, hey man, like, how did you feel watching this scene? And it was a testament to Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne, man, because they do a lot in that sequence. Like they do a lot. And for two guys where previously to the Matrix, they weren't known as martial artists, and those guys put in the work, you know, and he was telling me just how great they did with their technique, with their form. You can tell that these two guys put in the work. And I got to give major props to Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne, because again, before this, Keanu Reeves was known for like Bill and Ted, for Speed, Point Break, where, you know, not really martial arts heavy, and Lawrence Fishburne as well. And these guys went in there, put on their gis. You can tell they put a lot of hours into
Oh,
training and took it very seriously, because when they're on screen and you can see them throwing really good form, really solid stuff. This is one of my favorite sequences in the movie. Like the movie's got amazing sequences, but this idea of them fighting, you get the little Bruce Lee like nod from Keanu Reeves, and it was like, oh, this is fantastic stuff. And we get to see a little bit of them exploring, you know, bending reality just a little bit with, you know, with some of the height in their jumps and whatnot, and their strength and their speed. The sequence is just, it's just fantastic. It's one of my favorite in the movies. And I think that when you think about the Matrix, you can't help but think about this training sequence. It's that good.
So they do have this understanding of the Matrix's simulated nature, which allows them to bend its physical laws, which is why in the fight you saw that. You know, saw them going faster. You saw the jump. You saw the, you know, just the way that they hit the furniture around them and stuff like that. Like it's we're starting to understand why these people can do these things within the Matrix. We get the next part. You know, he says, "Load the jump program." So
I do want to say this.
Yeah.
In the dojo. When they're in the sparring session, there's a great moment where you start to see Neo's speed get faster. And it's a great moment because they're having this conversation. He goes, "Why do you think I hit you?" And he goes, "You're too fast." And he goes, "Do you really think speed, strength, those things in here play a difference? You think that's air you're breathing right now?" And he's like, "Get up." And they're doing it again. And you see Neo, and he's throwing strikes, and they're starting to get fast. And you can see Morpheus dodge it, but his eyes are widening. He's like, "Whoa!" Like he's like even for him, like Neo's picking this up relatively quickly. And then Neo gets essentially the final shot. You know, he gets that opportunity to take out Morpheus, and he stops right in front of him and goes, "I know what you're trying to do." And it was such a great moment. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you for that. So we move on, and they do the jump program, and it shows how they can jump from building to building, and everyone's this, you know, they're circled around yet again. It's like everyone falls in their first jump, but well, what if he does? If he does, you know, it's like, what if he doesn't? Yeah, and they're like, no, he's gonna fall. They all do, and he falls. He falls, and it's like, what does it mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything, you know. So
doesn't everybody falls the first time? Trinity under her breath is like, "Come on, Neo." Like, right? Like
she wants it to happen.
They want it to happen because you know, Morpheus especially, but Trinity, like there's this hope that Neo is the one, and the idea that someone could perform the leap on the first try would show a significant difference between him and everybody else who's come before him. And again, Cypher's like, "It doesn't mean anything, kid. Like everybody falls the first time." And again, we got another humorous moment. Like Keanu's like, "All right, clear your mind, clear your mind, you know, just run." And he jumps, he falls, and you know, unfortunately for him, he doesn't make it.
Yeah. So they come out of the program, and Neo is covered in sweat. He's visibly sore, and then you see him, little blood in the mouth. And this is where Morpheus explains to him. He's like, "I thought it wasn't real," and he warns Neo that a death within the Matrix kills the physical body. And it explains that the agents, well, before we move forward here, essentially, it's like, well, if your mind believes it, then that's what's going to end up happening. So that's why this is happening to you.
He's like, "I thought it wasn't real." And he goes, "Your mind makes it real."
Right.
And he was like, "And your body cannot survive without the mind." And it's like, yeah.
So he explains that the agents are sentient programs that eliminate threats to the system, while machines called sentinels eliminate rebels in the real world. And I don't recall when exactly in the movie this happened, but we see those machines. And
Mhm.
I thought it was a really cool moment where when they catch up to the ship, they have to hit the EMP blast.
Oh yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because it's like, well, we can't use our electronics, but if we hit them with the blast, then they're done.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. They jump back in again, and we get this great speech about the real world, people that aren't ready to unplug,
Mhm.
doctors, lawyers, all these people and their little jobs. This is all they care about, and I wanted to give a shout out to the woman in the red dress.
Oh yeah.
It's like, are you getting all this, Neo, or were you too busy, looking at the woman in the red dress? So
Mhm.
let's get a little shout out here.
Oh yeah.
Her name is
Look.
Fiona. Her name is Fiona Johnson.
Mhm.
um, what a great choice.
Yeah, and like just aesthetically, it's the way everyone's wearing predominantly dark colors, and then you have this beautiful blonde woman with a bright red dress, red lipstick. Her job is to distract. That's why she's programmed into this moment to see. You know what I mean? And you know, and Morpheus talking to Neo does get distracting. Goes, "Do you understand? Or are you distracted by the woman in the red dress?" It's a good moment.
If you go online, there are message boards upon message boards about
Mhm.
this woman, and people talk about like um, who she is, that she's not just a program; she's like somebody for real,
Mhm.
and like, well, the program was inspired by somebody that was real, and who the woman in the red dress could become one day, and how they had big plans for the woman in the red dress.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
there's so many theories about the woman in the red dress. You're a Star Wars fan, so I did want
Mhm.
to tell you this. There is an Easter egg in Attack of the Clones, and she's in it.
Oh, see, look,
Sh-
see, didn't even know.
yeah, I think Mouser, he's in
Mhm.
it, and he's talking to Obi-Wan. He's trying to sell him something. The actor that plays Mouser.
Okay.
And then in the very next scene, you see Fiona Johnson as the woman in the red dress
Oh,
in
that's so
Attack of
good. That's
Yeah,
so
she's
good.
not dressed the same way, obviously, but
Obviously,
it's
yeah, but
clearly
that's
like a
so
shout out
good.
to the Matrix, to the point that they had the guy that played Mouser do it. So I thought
Mhm.
that was really cool.
That's cool.
So I looked that up there. Um, Alrighty. So Neo's prowess during virtual training cements Morpheus's belief that Neo is the one, a human prophesized to free mankind. So through all the trainings and such, he starts seeing Neo start to gain those powers,
Mhm.
quote unquote powers, just
Yeah.
those abilities. Like he's moving faster, he's getting stronger, he's starting to make the jumps. Like, okay, we're starting to see things move along here. So next up, we shift to Cypher and Neo.
Mhm.
They have an interaction, and they're talking, and he's like, "I know what you're thinking. It's the same thing we all thought when we woke up. Why, oh, why didn't I take the blue pill?"
Yeah, because look, they make it a point to show you how bad things really are. And the idea that you could essentially have stayed plugged into the Matrix, unbeknownst to you, all the horrible things that's happened, you don't know. You're plugged into the Matrix living your life. Like, who wouldn't want that? So it's a great conversation because they start planting seeds, some foreshadowing, but they start planting seeds of like, what it's like to make that choice. If you knew that life would be harder, if you knew that life would be much more different, possibly darker, by taking a risk, would you take it? Would you go back on that if you could? It's a great. I like this scene between Cypher and Neo.
So they're talking about that and such. And we don't waste any time. In the very next scene, Cypher is shown making a deal with Agent Smith. So
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, oh no,
Yep.
he's and he talks about, and this is just a great social commentary here. He's eating the steak. He's like, I know the steak isn't real. I can smell it. I can taste it. But my mind tells me that I'm eating a steak.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, after all these years, and he drops another line, ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss. I am guilty of this in real life, where I tell people sometimes, if it's bad, I don't want to know it. I'm like, don't tell me.
Yeah.
I don't want to know. I like, depending on where I am in my life at the moment, I'm like, if it's really bad, I don't want to know it right now. Like, ignorance is bliss. And I'm not agreeing with Cypher in any way, shape, or form, because he's essentially turning on his friends, his peers, and the human race. And I'm like, I understand what I get it, man. You saw the ugliest side of humanity, and you're like, I can't do this. I'm not built for this. He's completely wrong. But I was like, oh man, I get it. Because with that one line, ignorance is bliss. And he makes a deal, and he tells Agent Smith what he wants. He wants to go plugged in. He doesn't want to remember anything. That's very important. He's like, I don't want to remember nothing. I don't want to remember anything about the real world, the Matrix, this people that I've met. I want nothing. I want to go back. I want to be rich. You know what I mean? Like, he wants this artificial life that, even though it isn't real, it will be real to him, because his mind will tell him that everything around him is real.
Yeah. And this is how broken Cypher's become while being in the real world. You know what? I don't care. Plug me back in.
Yep.
Make me forget, make me rich, make me someone important, like an actor. And I'm glad that they chose that profession,
Oh,
because,
yeah.
Because a lot of people think about celebrity and think about it being the greatest thing ever, So I thought that was a really great moment. It was sad, it was sad.
It was. And that's why I think it's a good scene. And I don't agree with him, but I understand, because, like, to Cypher, he feels lied to. Like, he's seen this. Like, he's seen Morpheus, and he's heard Morpheus preach, like, I'm gonna find the one, I'm gonna do this. And Cypher is just like, no, that's not what this is. Like, this is the worst case scenario. Like, if he would have told me, I wouldn't have taken that pill. You know what I mean? Like, that's why we have that conversation. Neo goes, you're wondering why you didn't take the blue pill, and he just he feels lied to. He's like, no, this isn't it. Again, he's doing the worst thing imaginable at this point by betraying his friends. Little does he know anything about Neo, but in his mind, it's he would much rather live in this falsehood than in reality, because reality is that bleak.
So the group enters the Matrix again to visit the Oracle, a prophet-like program who predicted that the One would emerge. We see another iconic scene here where we see quote-unquote potentials, and it's a bunch of kids using abilities. We see someone levitating blocks. We get to meet Spoon Kid, and sees the spoon bend. And I know what you're wondering. How can I bend the spoon? But you need to understand, there is no spoon.
There is no spoon. It's one of those, like you said, that sticks with us for a long time. It's like, there is no spoon. It's like, oh, there is no spoon. Okay.
Yeah. And we get that moment where he does it. He
he
actually does it.
Yeah.
So it's good. The Oracle implies to Neo that he is not the one. She doesn't tell him that he's not the one. She implies that he is not the one. Yeah. She warns that he will have to choose between Morpheus's life and his own. So before, I know you want to wax poetic on the Oracle here a little bit. That's okay. The Oracle, I wrote down, she's great. She's got an amazing screen presence. I'm gonna go give a shout out to Gloria Foster. That's her name. You could just tell she has a theater background with the delivery that she has, and I had to look it up. Yes, she was on Broadway before she started her career in film. So
she's great, dude. She's so good.
So you were going to say something there. I had mentioned.
This is another moment in the movie that is one of my favorite scenes, and it's just two people talking, and it's the context. One of my favorite aspects of the movie is this idea of fate. Earlier in the movie, they asked Neo, do you believe in fate? And he's like, no, I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my own destiny. And there's this conversation here with Oracle and Neo that really starts to dive into that narrative a little bit. Because when he walks in, she's like, oh, don't worry about the vase. And he's like, what vase? And he turns and he knocks over and breaks. And she goes, that one. And he goes, you knew I was going to do it? And she was like, yeah. And he goes, but the real question is, would you have done it if I hadn't said anything? And like, when she said that, I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I love this conversation that we're having, because again, there's a difference of knowing and choosing. And we start to get this idea of, what is it that Neo wants? What is it that Neo believes? And we'll learn more about the Oracle as it goes on. And Neo's very, curious. He's asking Morpheus, like, oh, what did she tell you? Trinity, what did she tell you? And they're all being very vague. They're not really opening up too much. Morpheus just says that, I would find the one. Doesn't say that he's the one, that I would find the one. Morpheus, I would find the one.
Right.
And you have Neo in there, and it's so great. She does the whole spiel where she's like, all right, give me your hands, open your mouth. And she's doing what I guess instinctively what he feels it would be like. And she's like, all right, because she's doing this and checking him out. And she even asks him, like, she looks at him and goes, I would go, that's interesting. And you would go, what? And they're playing off this idea of like feeding each other. And he's the one that says it. He goes, I'm not the one. Like she lets him say, and then from that moment, it's like, okay, he's saying he's not the one. As the Oracle, what is she going to say?
Right.
And, and she does the whole like, sorry, kid, you got the gift, but you're hanging on to something. You're holding back. You know what I mean? And it's this great moment. And I remember the first time I watched it going, wait, is he not the one? Is he not?
Right. She was agreeing with him, but she wasn't actually going to tell him if he was or not.
And that's why I was like, wait, is she messing with him? Is that so? It was great because at that moment I was like, I don't know, because he's so like, I'm not it, and she was like, sorry, you got the gift, but you're waiting for something, you're holding back, and I'm like, what does that mean? Is he not? But it was great. It was good. I love this scene.
Yeah, and he goes to spill the beans to Morpheus, and he stops us up. She told you what you needed to hear.
Yes, and that was the moment where I started to kind of put together when Morpheus says a line, she tells you what you needed to hear, and I was like, okay. And to bring up your point that you brought up, she does bring up the fact that there's going to be a choice, a very difficult choice. Morpheus believes in you so much that he's going to be willing to sacrifice his life for you, and you will have to make a choice. One of you will die. That choice is up to you. And I was like, geez, that's heavy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is after he's learned in his mind. This is after in his mind he has accepted, I'm not the one. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he's like, what's going to happen? So she definitely plays with him a little bit, and I really appreciated it.
I like the fact that they close out the scene with her handing him the cookies, which she had been working on.
Yes.
She's like, here, just have a cookie. He's like, why? Listen, I promise you, when you're done, you'll feel right as rain.
You're going to feel so much better.
It's to me, I took that as just a reference to, I didn't have this personal experience, but there's so many people that when they go to visit grandma, or their grandma or their mama, whatever, abuela, whoever you call them, how she always makes you feel better, and I feel like that was like a little play on that there.
It was a great gesture for her to be like, just eat this. I promise once you eat this, you'll feel better. And he walks out and he eats it. He takes a bite. He takes a bite of cookie. And I was like, good.
So before they can leave the Matrix, agents and police ambush the group. And unfortunately, Mouser, who we haven't talked much about, he's the first to go. He was the one that created the woman in the red dress. He's the youngest one on the crew of the Nebuchadnezzar. And unfortunately, he's the first to go. So as they're going up the steps, because they're trying to get away from everybody, we have another moment here. Neo sees a black cat. And he goes, oh, that's strange. And everyone stops. What did you see? He's like,
deja vu.
They heard him say deja vu. And he tells them about the black cat. And they said deja vu is usually a glitch in the Matrix. And it means that they changed something. So the Wachowskis, once again, something that we experience.
Yes.
Here, we experience deja vu all the time. They're like, hey, let's put that in a movie and then make it be something to deal with the Matrix. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
So, as we know, they were tipped off by Cypher, who is a disgruntled crew member who ended up betraying Morpheus and everybody in exchange for a deal to be plugged back into the Matrix to live a comfortable life, which we discussed. To buy time for the others, Morpheus fights Agent Smith and he's captured. Cypher exits the Matrix, and then he murders through 3 crew members. He shoots Tank, who I believe is Dozer's brother,
Mhm.
and he unplugs APOC and Switch back to
Yeah.
back. So 3 people gone right then and there. He severely wounds a 4th, Tank, and just before he can kill Neo and Trinity, Tank jumps up with the electricity gun, I guess we're gonna call it.
As a kid, I was so excited because I was like, "That's like a Ghostbusters proton pack." I said, "What
Yeah,
is that?" Like, it just shoots this. It shoots this massive burning electrical charge, and it just completely takes him out.
yeah, it's great. Um, so uh, Tank wakes up and he ends up getting a Cypher. He kills him
Mhm.
before pulling Neo and Trinity back from the Matrix. Moving forward here. Oh, by the way, and something really awesome happened. And Cypher's having his, he's monologuing. So
Yeah, dude.
that was your key to
Yeah,
know he ain't gonna make it.
yeah.
If you monologue, you ain't making it. Sorry.
He's given the exposition on why he did it, and again, like this is where he kind of pinpoints and he says it, like he's like, "Say your goodbyes." Say bye to Switch, like, and it's like, dude, that's really dark. And he's like, look and look at him in his eyes. But he says it. He goes, he lied to us, Trin. He lied to us. He didn't tell us the truth. This, we gave up the Matrix for this. If I have to choose between this and the Matrix, I choose the Matrix. Like, he can't handle it. And he's willing to give all them up. And when he started taking out his own crew, that's when I was like, oh, dude, you gotta go, man.
It's bad.
You
Yeah.
gotta go.
And as he's about to take out Neo, he said, "If Neo is truly the one, then some act of God is going to
Mm-hmm.
stop me from doing it." And lo and behold,
Yep.
Dozer jumps up, and you hear him. I don't believe it.
I don't believe it. He goes, well, believe it or not, you're gonna burn. Yep, takes him out.
Yeah, got
Yep.
him. We shift to another nice, not nice, but another iconic scene here. The agents, um, Smith in particular, interrogate Morpheus to learn his access codes to the mainframe computer in Zion, which would then
Mhm.
allow them to destroy it. We get some incredible dialogue here from Hugo
Oh yeah.
Weaving. Um, he talks about how he takes his earpiece out so no one else can hear him. He's like, "No, I want this to end. I'm done
Yeah.
with all of this."
Yeah.
So
It's
let's
a really good scene because he's a program. Like his main job in there is to hunt anomalies and the people who wake up and and everything else. And he is just completely over this idea. He hates humans. He's like, you guys aren't even actually mammals. You guys go from place to place. You use up every resource, and then you move on and you populate. You destroy. And he goes, I want out of this place. I hate it. He wants nothing to do with it. And it's this moment where like we get to look at Agent Smith a little differently because you essentially have Morpheus, Trinity, Neo, all those characters. They're rebellious. They are fighting against the system. And Agent Smith, who is supposed to be all about the program and the Matrix and keeping things in order, is also rebellious. He wants out. He no longer wants to be in the system whatsoever. He wants to be free. And that was really interesting to see that on an agent. Like we hadn't seen anything leading up to this point that they could behave this way, think this way. And he's like, no, I want completely out of here.
I remember a moment, and Morpheus, they shoot him up with these drugs, truth telling
Mhm.
serum, and he's just like sweating it out, like he's being tortured.
Mhm.
He's essentially being tortured, and he talks to him. He's like, It's I want out of this place. I don't want to be here anymore." And he takes a pause and he goes, "It's the smell." And
Yeah.
he made a face, and he's like, "You people, you're a disease." Like you said it, you use up resources. He's like, there's bacteria that do that. Bacteria do
Yeah.
that. Parasites do that. Humans are a disease, and
Mhm.
I don't know if he was told to do this or not, but he does this great choice. He wipes the sweat from Fishburne's head and he shoves it up his nose.
Yep.
It's like, you people are disgusting. This is what you are to
Yep.
me, you know. But I'm not against you. I just don't want to be a part of it anymore.
Yeah, because
So
and again, it's the first time in the movie too where we see Agent Smith. Everything up to this point, the agents are very stoic. right? They're very stoic. And this is the first time where he's cutting loose. He's yelling, he's getting aggressive, he's showing a lot of facial expression. Like it's letting you know, like, no, even he wants out of this. Like he wants out. He wants nothing to do with humans. He wants nothing to do with this. He wants it all over so he can be free. And again, it was an interesting concept.
So Neo resolves to return to the Matrix to rescue Morpheus, as the Oracle prophesied, and Trinity insists on accompanying him. So we get some more iconic sequences here. You know, we see all the guns come forward, you know, and that
Oh yeah.
that white scene, so to speak, that we see over and over again. And you know, they enter the building, get this incredible gun sequence here, you know, with the ammo and just shooting up the building. Remember when that piece of the pillar fell?
Oh yeah.
After that wasn't planned, but they kept it in because it happened on
Perfect
camera.
timing.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. Again, it adds a little bit of comedic flair. You have all this destruction, and in the last second, you just have this piece fall over from the pillar. And I do want to say, like, there's a great moment right before they go into the Matrix. Neo's like, I'm going in. And Trinity's like, no, you can't. It's too dangerous. Morpheus gave his life to protect you because of this. And this is where the Oracle's words are playing a role in his choices. Because he goes, I'm not the one, Trinity. I'm not the one. She told me. And because Neo truly believes that Morpheus' sacrifices will be in vain, he will not allow him to die. So he's going to go in and, you know, quote unquote, believe. He's going to go in and do everything in his power to free him, because that pressure of like being the one and being this character is no longer there. And he refuses to let Morpheus die for an unjust cause, and it gives him the motivation he needs. And again, that's when it started coming around full circle, like, she tells you what you need to hear, you know. And as you mentioned, that action sequence, man, I like, you got to give that action sequence all its flowers, dude. Like when they go in there, they walk through the metal detector and it starts going off, and you have the security guard like, all right, buddy, open up your jacket. And he opens it up, and there's at least, right on frame, there's got to be at least 12 pieces. You know what I mean? Just like opens up, palm strike, amazing fight, great stunt, great choreography. And you had this amazing gunfight, man, just incredible to watch. And you can tell that like they just had a blast filming this thing, man, just an absolute blast filming it. And as you mentioned, it goes into this nice calm, pillar block falls over, elevator door closes, and we're on to the next scene. It's fantastic.
So while rescuing Morpheus, Neo gains confidence in his abilities, performing feats comparable to those of the agents. And we've seen it so many times before, but we get bullet time. You know, it looks like a slow motion type situation there, and the agents are doing it, and then Morpheus starts doing it, and we get this moment here, and let's pull this up here. You know, he does the limbo to dodge the bullets, and we mentioned something happened between him and Morpheus earlier, where he talks about dodging bullets, and he says, you know, when you're ready, you won't have to. So now we're thinking, oh, this is what he meant.
Yeah,
you know,
yep.
So,
this
but
is
then
that moment.
But you think about it, he said you won't have to dodge the bullet. So it's like, hold up, what's happening here? You know?
Yeah, this is one of those frames and scenes that, again, we have seen parodied in multiple movies. We have seen other movies try to duplicate it, and just it was very, very big in pop culture when it happened. And I remember seeing this scene in the movies, and you have the agent who's dodging all the bullets, because they mentioned it, like, dude, anybody who's ever gone one-on-one with the agent loses. And he's right in front of the agent, he's opening fire, and he hits with every single shot. The agent is just way too fast, and Neo yells, Trinity, help. And the agent opens fire, and I feel like everybody knows the body language. Like everyone does the thing, like they throw the one right arm, they throw the other right arm, they bend back, and you have the cameras going around him as he's you know, as he's dodging the bullet. And it's so cool because even though the shot is in slow motion, so we can appreciate everything that's happening, in real time, he is moving extremely fast, like faster than they've ever seen one of their fellow, people able to do or perform. And I guess he gets grazed like up in the shoulder and in the leg. He gets grazed a little bit, but it's just enough for him to miss. And then we get one of the most BA scenes in the entire movie, where the agent kind of stands over him and he goes, still only human. And Trinity is right next to the agent with the piece locked on his face, and she just goes, "Dodge this," and she pulls the trigger. And it's such a cool shot. I was like, bro, Trinity's the best. I love Trinity.
Yeah. And then I want to give a shout out to the bullet time here.
Mhm.
Once again, something else that we've never seen in a movie before. I don't remember
Nope.
seeing it.
No.
We've seen slow motion, but not bullet time. Bullet time is different, where like you can see everything happening, you could see the bullets going, and
It was so
such.
iconic in this movie that they started implementing it in video games. You remember Max
Yes.
Payne? Max
Yes.
Payne was one of the first games introduced bullet time because of The Matrix. Again, The Matrix is that movie, man.
Yeah. And so there wasn't CGI, it was green screen. So they
Mhm.
used what do you call that? Wire work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wire work. So when he did the limbo, that was really Keanu Reeves doing
Mhm.
the limbo with wires, against a green screen background. And I don't
Mhm.
know exactly how bullet time works, but that's how they achieved that effect there. So after, so they save Morpheus here. It's a great action sequence involving
Oh,
the helicopter and explosions, and it hits the building, and the building does a wave with the glass,
yeah.
like, oh
Oh,
my
it's
goodness.
there's a shot of Trinity when she jumps out of the helicopter, and you see the helicopter crash into the building behind her, and the glass all ripples. And as it explodes, she's dead center, hanging onto the rope. And it's just like, I'm like, that's an iconic shot. Like, that looks so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and they show us what it looked like from inside the building when she hit the glass, and
Yep.
you see the shatter, so that was really cool. After Morpheus and Trinity safely exit the Matrix, Smith ambushes and appears to kill Neo. While a group of Sentinels attack the Nebuchadnezzar, Trinity confesses her love for Neo and says the Oracle told her she would fall in love with the One. Neo is revived with newfound abilities to perceive and control the Matrix. So we're going to break this down because this is the ending of the movie here.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, we do have a fight sequence with Agent Smith.
Yeah.
And during the fight sequence, it's let's give a wrestling shout out here. It's 50-50 booking.
Oh, yeah. Dude, it's good. It's good.
It's 50-50 booking, Neo gets his shots in, Smith gets his shots in. And we see Neo, the abilities, they're starting to get a little bit better, but ultimately he needs to retreat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's a chase sequence, and then we have another fight, but not before Neo, quote unquote, dies by being shot by Smith multiple times. And more agents arrive and they shoot at Neo. Well, first of all, before that happens, he does wake up. He wakes
Yeah.
up after Trinity whispers in his ear, and they're like, "Oh no, what's happening here?" And then we get this another iconic shot here. They shoot at Neo, and he holds his hand up,
Oh, yeah.
and he just says, "No."
No.
And then it's like, "Oh no, what's happening here?" So the line is earlier in the movie. He tells Morpheus, "What are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?" "No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to."
You won't have to. And we've got our full circle moment. And it's a great moment because like there's this confidence. It's okay. So like as you mentioned, Neo's starting to become more and more comfortable, right? As the movie progresses, we're seeing him become more and more comfortable. Even starting up with him choosing to fight Agent Smith. Again, they make it a point. No one has ever gone one-on-one with an agent and survived. And they're in the subway. He has an opportunity to run. He has it. It's there. And he stops running in place and he turns around and they're like, what is he doing? And Morpheus says he's beginning to believe. We get our 50-50 booking. Amazing fight We're going back and forth. We're seeing great speed from both, even great speed from Agent Smith. Neo eventually gets the upper hand, but has to bolt. And this sequence is great. Like this chase sequence is fantastic because the agents keep popping up by taking over the bodies of just innocent bystanders and citizens all around. So if Neo runs into a building, they just become the people in the building.
Right.
And it's so cool. Like, again, very horror-esque because there's really no escape. It almost reminded me of like a nightmare sequence where like you think you've escaped the monster in your dream, but now they're in this room with you, now they're in this room with you. And it was a very, very exciting action sequence. The music's picking up and he's running and he's running and he's running. And they're like, Neo, we have a phone. You have to get here. You have to get here. And they're like, you have an old lady in the kitchen cooking. All of a sudden, it's Agent Smith throwing a blade. Like, it's so cool. And as soon as he's there in the room, this knocked the air out of me. As soon as he's there, he opens the door and he gets shot in the chest. And everything slows way down, like way down. And I'm just like, what? And as you mentioned, clears a clip into Neo, man. And you're kind of like, that's it. That's over. And we get our love story, man. Look, there's a love story in here.
Yeah.
Like there, as we continue in the future, I'll discuss it more. But I love the connection of Trinity and Neo. I absolutely adore it. It's one of my favorites in cinema. It's Trinity and Neo. And when she's like, he flatlines, dude. Like, it's over. And Morpheus is completely in shock. You have the machines coming in. They're kind of just like, we just lost. And she's like, the Oracle told me that I would be in love with the one. So get up. And it's so great because she's not plugged in. And after she kisses him, she's like, get up. His eyes open as if he can hear her. And I'm like, dude, like that connection is so strong that I absolutely loved it. And he gets up, like you said. And when they fire those bullets and he puts the hand up and he just says, no. And like, there's just this calmness, this acceptance, stops the bullets. They all fall. And the agents are kind of just like,
yeah, I think
what's happening?
He reached out.
He grabs one, dude. He grabs it.
And then
and they all just start falling. And it's like, what? And we get this really, again, another scene that has become a meme. Agent Smith is furious. You know, Neo's looking, he sees the code. He can read the code now. So he sees the code everywhere. It's a great sequence. And like, for me, I'm like, oh my God, like that's what it's like. That's the code. Like Cypher mentioned it earlier. Like he doesn't even see the code. He can see blonde, brunette, shapes, humans, cars, etc. And so he sees it and it's like, wow. And it's like, he's the one. He's the one. And you have that amazing scene where Agent Smith is throwing everything that he has at Neo, dude. And Neo with one arm is just blocking everything and doesn't even look at him, dude. And just blocking, kicks him, holds his foot in the air, puts it down. Right. Amazing.
So this is what we call no selling.
No selling, dude.
Yeah, he's no selling.
Fighting spirit, followed by some no sell.
Oh yeah.
Said, nah, we're not done yet. And it was so awesome. And then we're gonna get something like really crazy is about to happen.
Yeah. But in this moment, this is where Neo has arrived as the one. Yep. And we get that great visual of Neo seeing the coding. Just another wow moment. So many wow moments in the movie, but this is a wow moment too. It's an effortless fight against Agent Smith, you know, like you said, the one-handed moment. And at the very end, to end the fight, because and he beats him up this time, you know, he doesn't get a single hit in, Agent Smith doesn't. And to end the fight, he jumps into Agent Smith and bursts out of him Mortal Kombat style.
Yep. it was, I remember going like Agent Smith, like Hugo Weaving does such a great job because he kind of has this, like, he looks at the other agents and it's just like, what just happened? Like, what? And you see him slowly, like, you see his skin start to move in ways it's not supposed to. He's starting being stretched and he just explodes from within. And there's this amazing shot because Neo no longer has any wounds. He's completely healed. And he does this kind of flex where the surroundings around him, like the hallway, like moves out like a wave, like jello. And he's like pressing it and it's like, and I was like, I I don't even know what just happened right there, but it was awesome.
Yeah. So as Neo defeats Agent Smith, this prompts the other agents to flee,
Yup.
obviously. And he leaves the Matrix just as the ship's electromagnetic pulse, the EMP, disables the Sentinel. So as soon as
Mhm.
because they can't hit that button because he'll die if he's
Yep.
still jacked in. So, and the machines, they're about to get to the ship, and they're cutting in. They're about to get to where they're all at, and then
Mhm.
unless they hit that EMP, they're gonna get them. So obviously he gets out, and they hit it just at the right moment, and the Sentinels, they don't get to him. So
Mhm.
we're back in the Matrix again. This is how we end our movie. Neo makes a telephone call, promising the machines that he will show their prisoners a world where anything is possible, before he hangs up and flies away. And I,
Flies, dude.
yeah, yeah. So we saw a
What
whole
a
bunch of different
shot.
things. And I put this down here. He flies away Superman style, almost like how
Superman style, bro.
Superman movies usually end like that, with Superman
Mhm.
flying around the planet there. Um, and shout out to the Wachowskis, man. This was so cool. Wake Up, the song choice is
Yes.
Wake Up by none other than Rage Against the Machine
Perfect.
while the credits are playing.
Come
Um,
on. It's so good.
yeah, it's so cool. So that's our movie. And obviously, we all had initial thoughts upon seeing it, but what were some of your initial thoughts upon this rewatch here?
I remember the first time I saw it and being, again, as I mentioned earlier, being blown away by how different, unique, special, innovative it was, and watching it on my rewatch today. And I haven't seen it in quite a bit. And the idea that nothing feels dated, everything still feels special because I'm aware of the time of when it came out, but everything, I feel like everything they wanted to execute, they executed perfectly. Everything that they wanted to accomplish, they accomplished. Whether it was the technical achievements, whether it was the story, the ideas. Um, Rewatching it now, it's so interesting because there's so many elements in the movie that were so brand new at the time, but now have found its way into just society in general, like the idea of living in a simulation. Like that is a theory. Like people talk about that theory, and this was at the time when the Matrix came out. I never heard of that concept before, the idea of a simulation. And this movie was like, hey, what if the world was actually this and you were actually plugged into to a program? And the idea that the movie touched on certain things, the idea of living in an artificial world. We've talked about this. There have been discussions in the real world today where they talk about, oh, if you could upload consciousness, things of that nature. So when I watched The Matrix today, it's so interesting to go, wow, this movie was made in 1999, went into production a couple years prior, if you will, and like really touched on things that I'm seeing explore today. And that is so cool that when we can watch a movie that talks about the future or talks about things to come in general and be very close or be a talking point now, that's so awesome that they were able to do that. And like, again, the first time I saw it, I was confused. I was like, "Oh my god, what does this mean? What is the Matrix?" Okay, so that's the fictional world. And watching it now, having a complete understanding for what the movie is telling us, it's still so amazing that I can be in awe watching it, even though I've seen it so many times throughout my life, and watching it from my first experience to my experience today, and still have such an appreciation for everything they did. The Matrix is just one of those movies, man, that like when I talk to my friends, I'm like, guys, I can find very little wrong with this movie as a whole, and the fact that I can watch it in 2024 and still feel as strongly about it as I did in 1999 is a testament to how good the movie is.
I had to look this up. If just talking about the influences that went
Mhm.
into this movie, we would be here for a very long time. But
Yeah.
just some of the noteworthy ones that I had to put down here. As far as anime and martial arts, it says the Wachowskis were inspired by fight choreographers and wire kung fu techniques, from Hong Kong action cinema. as well as the 1998 anime film Akira.
Yeah.
The chase sequences in The Matrix are similar to those in Akira. It also says The Matrix is an example of the cyberpunk subgenre of science fiction, and it was influenced by William Gibson's 1984 book Neuromancer. And um, there's another anime movie that, if you ever watch some of the behind the scenes footage and such, it was influenced by Ghost in the Shell.
Nice.
That's probably the biggest one because they even
Yeah,
have that
I can
jack in
see that.
sequence, you know.
I can
But
see that.
there was a couple scenes that were actually live action recreations of things they saw in the movie there. It's been said that pieces of Tron influenced this movie as well. Um, literary references, we have 1984 by George Orwell. 20,000,
Ooh, I remember that
yeah,
one.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, The Doors of Perception by Huxley, as well as, of course, Alice in Wonderland.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to stop right there because there's just so much. There's philosophy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's biblical references as well. So many different ones. Clearly, Neo being a metaphor for Jesus. They talk about the city of Zion. That's from the Bible.
Mhm.
The ship named Nebuchadnezzar. The names themselves, Trinity. We can go on and on here. So
Dude,
there's
they talk about prophecy. Like, he's like, "It's the prophecy." Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
the prophecy of the one, the one that will save us all and whatnot and be chosen, et cetera, et cetera. Like, yeah, there's a lot of
yeah.
allegories and metaphors throughout this entire movie.
So the Wachowskis went and took something that's not a new concept of the machines taking over, and they
Mhm.
said, "We're gonna put that genre, spin it on its head,"
Oh,
and
yeah.
just they went in from all different angles of the influences that they had over the years in order to make this movie. I put this down here. I went to see this movie, and it was rated R, and it
Mhm.
was the first time I saw a rated R movie that wasn't a hard R.
Yeah.
Um, there are no F words in this
No.
entire movie. There are no sex scenes, and there is no visible nudity. Not even
Mm-mm.
when Neo gets unplugged from the Matrix and he's nude. Like, they do it in a way where you don't see stuff. So, um, I mean, as a filmmaker and someone who's been involved for many years, Ricardo, would you mind sharing with us why you think the Matrix was rated R? While I go look
Yeah.
that up here for a
Yeah,
second.
my wheels are spinning because I was like, "Wait a
Yeah.
minute," and I was like, "There's not even a gratuitous use of blood, which usually can be a flag,
There you go.
right?
That's another one, right?
A gratuitous use of blood can be a red flag, and we've talked about how some movies would jump from PG-13 to R based on blood use, and it might have been the amount of excessive gun violence in the movie, coming out in 1999 that might have played a role with it with being R, because again, there is a lot of action sequences with weapons and guns, and again, they're not short sequences. They are clearing out entire buildings of people with every gun imaginable. We do have a headshot in the film. I do recall that with Trinity and the agent. So we do get a headshot, and we do see an entrance wound. Maybe that played a role, because as you mentioned, like, if based on the choreography, the fighting, the language, all that could register as a PG-13 film easily a PG-13 film. I'm assuming it's the amount of um maybe the gun violence, maybe they were just like, all right, there's a lot, which in the grand scheme of the movie there really isn't. It's just that in the final act they go really hard. You just have those sequences, and I'm curious now. Like, I never really looked into it on why they gave it an R rating, considering what is not shown in the movie.
Yeah, I've seen things where the MPAA, where they, not them themselves, but people said that perhaps it was the violence and perhaps
Mhm.
it was the themes. Um, uh, just
Okay.
just the themes themselves. Not the fact that it
Mhm.
was a thinkers movie, because you can't make a
Mhm.
movie rated R for that, but just with the disturbing imagery of
Okay.
him waking up. I forgot to mention this. Remember the baby in the
Oh
pod?
yeah, they
Yeah,
do show a baby in the
the
pod.
baby in the
Yeah.
pod. There's some body horror.
Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable.
The bug, going in his
Mhm.
belly button, coming out. There's a couple scare,
Oh yeah. Okay.
so
We have
maybe
we
that.
have yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
gun
maybe for
violence. Those.
it might have been that imagery, because you do see the bug go into his stomach, and when they pull it out, there is blood. Like it comes out and there's blood,
Yeah.
and that might have played a role. Oh,
So,
okay.
but to your point, the gun violence probably had a lot to do with it.
Maybe,
A
right? Like
lot to
maybe
do with
that's what
it.
it was.
Yeah. But and then in addition to the disturbing imagery, maybe not with the mouth, but definitely once you saw the world, with the pods and everything like that. So I'd be
Yeah, because
curious to see what went into the MPA's decision. To this day, there hasn't been a definitive answer on it, but people speculated. Some people say that today the Matrix would have been PG-13, but we don't
possibly,
know.
because like if you're watching a Quentin Tarantino movie and you see a character get shot, they have blood squibs, right? Like you're getting blood splatter all over the screen. Even though there's a lot of gun violence in the movie, and you do see like these characters get shot, there's no blood. Like there's none. And it's like, I really, it might have been the themes, as well as um the amount of gun violence at the end. Um it might have been, honestly, a lot of the people that they do end up taking out are in police uniform,
Oh, there we
and
go.
that could play a role, that
You never know.
even though the movie is telling us that these people are living in a simulation, maybe it was the idea of Neo and Trinity walking into a building and shooting men that were all in, police uniforms and things of that nature. And I was like, could that have played a role? I don't think so, but I'm very curious. Like, I kind of want to look into this now. I'm like, well, wait a minute, why were you rated R?
Yeah. Um, so The Matrix was a box office success.
Mhm.
It was made for a budget of 63 million, so
Okay,
under 100 million.
good.
Um, I want to say, I mean, Keanu Reeves is probably the biggest name. Lawrence Fishburne was a name at the time,
Yeah, yeah.
but they billed Keanu Reeves as the lead. Um, it ended up making 467.6 million. So 63 to 467 million. That's a box office success.
Yeah. It's in
Um,
1999, dude. Yeah.
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 And we got to give credit where credit is due there. They made one of the most incredible looking movies of all time for
Oh, yeah.
$63 million.
Million. Yep.
There are movies in 2024 made for hundreds of millions of dollars that don't look as amazing as The
That's
Matrix does.
that's a rant that I have quite
Oh,
often
yeah.
sometimes when I
Yeah.
look at a movie and I'm like, I'm not even gonna mention it. There is a movie coming out this year that costs nearly $200 million, and I looked at it and I was like, it should not have cost that much money. That does not. And again, you look at a movie like this in 1999, made for considerably less than that, look incredible, and it's a major props to everybody involved, whether it was actually creating the props, the set designs, the character choices, all of that. Like in the beginning of the movie, when they open up, you can clearly tell it's a set. Like they are not physically on like buildings outside doing these stunts. It's a set, but it looks so good, so it's huge testament to everybody involved on just how good it looked for $63 million, he said.
Yeah, and yes, there was some CGI involved, but it
Hmm.
was mostly wire work
Hmm.
and green screen, and that's considerably cheaper than CGI.
Hmm.
So that had a lot to do with it as well. Um, the Matrix would go on during award season to win some Oscars,
Good.
and they won 4 of 4.
Good.
Best visual effects, best film editing, best sound mixing, and best sound editing. It won all 4 of the categories it was nominated for that year at the Academy Awards. This is considered the largest clean sweep of nominated categories for a film not nominated for Best Picture. So good for them that they were able
I'm
to
good.
do that.
Good.
If it wasn't 1999, let's just say later on, would The Matrix have been nominated for Best Picture? Because
Oh,
genre
yes.
films do not get nominated for Best Picture. It does
No, they
not
don't.
happen. Um, Fast forward to 2008 when The Dark Knight was snubbed. It was nominated for it wasn't nominated for that many, but people felt like Best Picture. Come on, and they didn't do it. You know.
I want to be optimistic and say, had a movie like this come out at a time where genre films could have been taken into consideration, I would like to believe it would have, because again, I had this conversation. I was like, I think The Matrix is one of those films that I consider to be a perfect movie in the sense that everything they strive to achieve, I think they achieved, from a technical achievement to story to characters to the love of the game. Like, I'm like, it's everything that I feel like the movie wanted to be. It was. And the amount of influence that the movie has on the genre, on movies as a whole. Again, I said it earlier. I said I would say it a few times. There were movies before The Matrix and after The Matrix, and I think it'd be kind of hard to ignore that watching a movie like that when and considering it for such a prestigious award. I'm like, you got to at least consider it, guys. Like, come on.
I need to correct what I said. I said The Dark Knight wasn't nominated. It was nominated for plenty. It was nominated
Mhm.
for 8 Oscars, but it only won 2.
Yeah.
One for obviously Best Actor for Heath Ledger, and then Best Editing. But the fact that The Dark Knight was nominated for 8 Oscars, but
And
it
not Best
wasn't nominated,
Picture.
but not for Best Picture, and a lot of people said
Mhm.
because it was a genre film. So
Yeah.
later on, eventually, we started seeing more genre films.
Oh yeah.
Um, get nominated. You talk about your Mad Max Fury Road. That
Mhm.
was later on. Talk about Nolan, another Nolan movie. Inception was nominated for Best Picture. So eventually the Academy started opening things up, and it was like,
Mhm.
okay, we can start moving forward with this.
Yeah.
But at the time, 1999, unfortunately, it was just a sign of the time. But
Mhm.
I would like to believe that if The Matrix had come out later, that the Academy would have said, okay, I guess it should
Yeah.
be nominated.
Yeah, that's the optimistic side of myself. Is I'm like, I'd like to believe that maybe they'd look at it and go, you know what I mean? Like, again, we had Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, come on. Like, and Mad Max Fury Road is incredible. And just like The Matrix and Mad Max Fury Road, they both kind of changed the game again in a certain genre. So, like, yeah, I'd like to believe so.
I have a few talking points here as far as trivia goes.
Mhm.
So, just a handful here. So, all scenes that take place within the Matrix have a green tint, as if
Mm,
watching them through a computer monitor.
yeah.
Scenes in the real world have a blue tint. So, the blue is also used as a minimum within the Matrix, since the directors thought blue was more of a real world color.
Mhm.
And the fight scene between Morpheus and Neo, which is neither in the real world nor in the Matrix, is tinted yellow. So, that's as far as that goes. Um, in the first 45 minutes of the film, Neo has 80 lines, and 44 of those lines are questions, averaging roughly one question per minute, rightfully so.
Yeah. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. In 2012, The Matrix was selected by the U.S. Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Registry archives for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. How awesome is
Yup.
that?
Yup. And rightfully so.
Yeah, it's a piece of history, essentially.
Yup.
That's
Yeah.
what they decided. Um, at the director's request, the actors were to be able to understand and explain the Matrix not only as a film, but as a philosophy.
Mhm.
Um, so, Simulacra and Simulation by Jean Baudrillard was required reading from most of the principal cast and crew. I'm unfamiliar with that book.
Mhm.
Keanu Reeves said even before they opened the script, the Wachowskis had him read the book. Also, Out of Control by Kevin Kelly, and Introducing Evolutionary Psychology by Dylan Evans. I don't know what any of these books are.
Yeah.
Eventually, he was able to explain all the philosophical nuances involved. Carrie Ann Moss commented that she had difficulty with this process. So
Oh,
the
I believe it.
Wachowskis were like, no, you're not just going to be in this movie. You need to read these books to
Yeah.
understand what you're going to be in. Talk about character work.
Yeah, like that you assign some, some homework on this. I would been in the similar boat. I'm like, I'm not. This isn't registering. Wait, all right, so what is this about? Okay, okay. So yeah.
In an online interview when the film was first released, the Wachowskis revealed that they'd both take the blue pill when given
Hmm.
Neo's choice. So they would have went back in. They
Yeah.
themselves.
It's a hard choice, man. It's a very, very, very difficult choice. The idea of kind of living the life that you already know, like that fear of change, man. It's very difficult, and sometimes people do take that red pill. For whatever metaphor you have going on in life, and sometimes it takes some people longer than others, but sometimes the idea of just living comfortably with what is the safer bet for a lot of people.
So let's show some love to the cast here.
Yes.
And this will also include some trivia as far as the casting goes. Obviously, we have Keanu Reeves as Neo.
Mhm.
We see here that Will Smith turned down the role of Neo to
Yup.
make Wild Wild West.
What a
He was
choice, my boy.
he was skeptical over the film's ambitious bullet time sequences.
Mhm.
He later stated he was not mature enough as an actor at the time, and if given the role, he would have messed it up. Smith praised Reeves for his portrayal. Nicolas Cage also turned down the part because of family obligations. Warner Brothers sought Brad Pitt or Val Kilmer for the role. When both declined, Leonardo DiCaprio initially accepted the role, but ultimately turned it down because he did not want to do a visual effects film
Mhm.
directly after doing Titanic. The studio pushed for Reeves, who won the role over none other than Johnny Depp, the Wachowski's first choice. And it was also stated a screenplay was sent to Sandra Bullock with the suggestion of rewriting Neo as a woman. How wild is that?
Listen, there's so many. I've heard Will Smith tell that story numerous times because he's constantly asked in interviews, like, "Oh, is there one project that you didn't get to do that you were asked you would have changed your mind?" And he was like, "Oh man, I chose I chose Wild Wild West over the Matrix." You know what I mean?
Right.
And it comes up, and you get all these other great names, that they mentioned, like Leonardo DiCaprio, Nicolas
Yeah.
Cage. Like you're like, these are strong names, man. And it's always interesting to wonder what it would have been like. And even Sandra Bullock, like making the character Neo a female is interesting. Like, oh man, what would that have been like? Sandra Bullock is amazing. And it's one of those things where like everything lined up the way it was supposed to. Not that those other actors wouldn't have done an amazing job, but like Keanu Reeves,
Yeah.
man, he's Neo. What a perfect choice.
Yeah. It ended up being the best choice,
Yes.
as far as that goes. We have Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus, who once
Yeah.
again he did an amazing job as Morpheus. And the Wachowskis instructed Fishburne to base his performance on the character Morpheus in Neil Gaiman's Sandman comics. Other actors attached to the role include Gary Oldman, Samuel L. Jackson, and Val Kilmer. So,
Dude, I'm telling you, Gary Oldman, like we're talking about one of the greatest actors ever. So it's definitely not a bad thing to have all these great actors, up for the running. But like I said with Keanu Reeves, I can't envision anybody else besides Lawrence Fishburne as
yeah.
Morpheus. Just
Yeah,
what a
and then the
wonderful job.
vocal choice, when
Yeah, dude,
just
like
the choices.
the way he spoke, his cadence, his voice, like it lent itself so well to the mysterious nature of Morpheus. It was great.
We have Carrie Ann Moss as Trinity.
Oh,
Let's take a look here.
I love her.
Janet Jackson was initially approached for the role, but scheduling conflicts prevented her from accepting it. In an interview, she stated that turning down the role was difficult for her, so she later referenced The Matrix in the intro and outro interludes on her 10th studio album Discipline.
Mm.
Sandra Bullock, who was previously approached for the role of Neo, was also offered the role of Trinity, but she turned it
Imagine.
down. She
Imagine
turned
we got the reunion of
a
Keanu
speed
and Sandra
reunion.
Bullock
How
in The
nuts.
Matrix.
No shade to Carrie Ann Moss, but man, that would have been
No,
wild.
listen, I love Carrie Ann Moss. I didn't know who she was prior to this movie, and I instantly fell in love with her. I was like, oh my God, who is this? She's incredible. I love her. I love her.
Other actresses considered include Rosie Perez, Salma
Interesting.
Hayek, and then Jada Pinkett Smith, who would later go on to play Niobe in the
You know what?
sequels.
You know what I love the most about hearing these choices is that there isn't a character type, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like they were just looking for strong performers or people that they thought would be
Yep.
great in that particular role. Like it's not, they're not doing like the character has to look this way, the character
Nope.
has to sound this way. Like when you brought up, Salma Hayek and Janet Jackson and Rosie Perez, like they all sound so different. Their dialect, their accents, they look different. Like all the different ethnicities. The fact that the Wachowskis were like, these are individuals that were looking for these roles. I love the idea that they weren't so strict, because you and I both know, especially when you go on auditions, sometimes you will get an audition based on look alone. Sometimes they're like, hey, we're looking for an actor that has long black hair, this and this and that, and blah, 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 blah. And we want an actor who is this tall, or we want an actor who's got a light complexion. Like when it comes to auditions, they can be very tight and very strict sometimes with their looks. So the idea that the Wachowskis, when I hear all these names, I love their casting process. Like I'm just like, oh, it's so cool to see the variety within their choices.
We have Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith.
Mm.
And Weaving stated that he found the character amusing and enjoyable to play. He developed a neutral accent, but with more specific character for the role. He wanted Agent Smith to sound neither robotic nor human, and also stated that the Wachowskis' voices had influenced his voice in the film. So there's that iconic delivery, Mr. Anderson. Just it's so good.
Mr. Anderson, welcome back. Like
Right.
I love it. I love the way he speaks.
When filming began, Weaving mentioned that he was excited to be part of something that would extend, that would stretch him, so to speak.
Mhm.
We have actor Jean Reno was offered the role, but declined, unwilling to
Mm.
move to Australia for the production.
Okay.
We have seasoned actor Joe Pantoliano as Cypher.
Yes.
We have Marcus Chong as Tank, Matt Doran as Mouse, Rowan Witt as the Spoon Boy. We have Gloria Foster as the Oracle, Anthony Ray Parker as Dozer, Julian Aranja as APOC, and let's see here. I want to make sure this is the last person I will mention, and I wanted to mention everybody. Just great ensemble cast there. Lastly, here I want to close with Belinda McClory as Switch, and she's just one of the crew members, also freed by Morpheus. And I'm just going to go ahead and read this excerpt here that I found on IMDb. When Belinda McClory auditioned for the role of Switch, she was only going for half the role. The character was originally planned to be played by androgynous actors. In the real world, Switch would be a male actor, and in The Matrix, a female, hence the name Switch. Warner Brothers refined the idea, and McClory ended up getting a single female role in both environments. So, in The Matrix, she was going to be a woman, the person we saw, but in the real world, she was going to be a man, if I read that correctly here. In interviews many years later, the Wachowskis, who at the time had been considering undergoing transition, stated that there were trans elements in the film, and this was one of them. So, for those of you that may or may not know, the Wachowski started out as the Wachowski brothers.
Yep.
And eventually they transitioned, and now they are known as just simply the Wachowskis. They wanted to have a trans character in the movie, and whatever happened, it didn't happen. But they left the character's name as Switch. And I mean, kudos to the actor. She did such a great job. It was like, you know what? We're just going to have it be both the same way. But I'd like to think that maybe this was a concept that was like, it was probably a little too controversial in 1999 for Warner Brothers to keep it in the movie. That's just my assumption.
I can imagine. I'm curious if that's what it was, because I remember, there was programming and shows where they would talk about transgender characters early in the 90s, and it was usually met with like a joke or, treated,
Right.
very, very off-putting in a very off-putting way. And maybe Warner Brothers at the time was like, 1999 released the idea of having a male character who can go into a fictional reality where they can choose the skin they are most comfortable in. Being a woman might have been something at the time, because we're merely speculating. We'll never truly know, but maybe the studio just decided like, oh, maybe that's just something we're not ready to put in this movie yet. I do think that is a concept that can fit easily in a movie now, where you can put that in and without any hesitation. There's no second glance or like what's happening. It'd be like, oh no. And we've seen it in other movies. We have seen that happen. I think Ready Player One has a character who is in the outside world a female, but she plays as a male character. And it's one of those things that we see now, but in 1999, maybe they weren't ready for it, but I do think that's such a great concept. And the idea of her name being Switch,
Yeah.
it lends itself so well to it. Again, everyone's names have meaning. You have Morpheus, you have Neo, which spells out the one. You know what I mean? Like you have the Oracle. Like there's all these names, and then you had Switch. The idea that this character felt more comfortable, because their self-image, if you will, when Neo goes back into the Matrix for the first time, Morpheus tells him, like, look, all the plugs in your arm and neck are gone, your hair is back, this is your self-image, this is how you view yourself. So the idea of having a male character and this is how they feel, this is how they see themselves, would have been really, really awesome to see. But perhaps at the time Warner Brothers just wasn't ready to, maybe they just weren't ready to pull that trigger, if you will.
Yeah, and I like Switch's screen presence, actually. She was a
Yeah.
pretty cool character as
Oh, she
far
was
I mean,
awesome.
everybody on the crew was really cool,
Mhm.
but she was a cool character, and how cool would that have been, to just have that moment, and when Neo wakes up and, "Hi, I'm Switch. You don't look like the
Yeah,
per" and it's like, "No, you're not
that
Switch. Switch is a blonde woman that I just met," you
what
know?
a that I didn't even think about that idea, but
That would
what
have
a
been
great
such a
reveal. That would have been so awesome because obviously Neo meets Switch for the first time within the Matrix, and it would have been
Right,
so amazing to, like, as he's meeting the crew, he meets Switch, and he's being presented with a man, and he's like, "No, and you just have this moment and this realization, and you could have had a great conversation, a
right.
really educational conversation on why Switch feels this way, why Switch feels more comfortable this way. And that would have been really great. But like you said, maybe for 1999 the studio just felt, maybe we won't do that just yet. But nowadays you can absolutely do that and be nothing wrong with it.
Alrighty, so we're gonna start closing things down here. We have been chatting for a little bit, um, and I wanted us to close things out by talking about the impact of the Matrix because we cannot. We've been talking about it this entire movie, but we can't just show some love to what the Wachowskis did with
Mhm.
such an amazing piece of cinema. This is cinema. This amazing
Yeah.
piece of history in film. This changed so many lives. It changed
Mhm.
the lives of the cast. Keanu Reeves, most importantly, I love when you see these interviews. He gets choked up
Yes.
talking about this movie, and this, we know what he's gonna say, but people
Mhm.
ask him, like, what is, in your filmography, could you talk? And he talks about The Matrix,
The Matrix.
The Matrix changed my life. I'd already been in movies, but no, that's the one thing that changed my life. And I'm so thankful for the Wachowskis for giving me that chance. It's so emotional. It's amazing. The crew members, some of these folks here, they went on to be the ones to make the John Wick franchise,
Yep.
bringing back people from the Matrix, including Keanu Reeves. So that was really cool. I'm talking about Chad Stahelski, you know?
Mhm.
So that's really cool. And then the impact on cinema as a whole, parodies um, for comedy worth, but also um, comedy aspects rather, but just action, science fiction, visual effects,
Visually,
and
yes.
it's so funny. I love that you say that line. There are movies before The Matrix and there are movies after The Matrix. And it's so interesting. And so many films have tried to mimic or um, go to the next level of filmmaking And it's always just like, yeah, that's really cool. That looks really nice. But at the time, The Matrix did it first, and no one did it
Mhm.
like the way The Matrix did. Um, what an amazing film, and a film that's going to continue being spoken about um, from now until the end of time. You know, it's an iconic movie. It is a piece of history. Um, the Matrix is amazing, you know, and it goes without saying, I don't give these out often, but yeah, The Matrix is a 10 out of 10.
That's how you know. That's how you know. If you
Yeah,
give something a 10 out of a 10, that's how you know.
yeah. And
And
speaking of which, I don't want you to forget, off the air, you told me that you felt The Matrix was a perfect movie, so I
yes.
do want you to mention that as well.
Yes, I The Matrix is special for a number of reasons, man. I think when we talk about Keanu Reeves and his personal experience, and I know that there's been interviews that I've seen that we have shared with one another, that we've spoken about with one another, where you can see the real emotion when he talks about it and how impactful it changed not only the trajectory of his career, but his life in a sense, the relationships that were built because of this. Hearing like wonderful stories about how great of a human being Keanu Reeves is with the cast and the Wachowskis and their relationship and their growth together, not just in their careers but their personal lives. And that's something really, really special because, a lot of times actors will work together and they can build relationships and friendships, but it's really unique when you can create such the special bonds that Keanu talks about, and that's amazing. And as you mentioned, we've seen movies changed forever, because of the Matrix. We can talk about comedies, we can talk about parodies, and those things in nature are meant to do those things out of flattery, obviously. But there have been serious contenders and major motion pictures that were inspired by the Matrix, and we started to see bullet time in more movies. We started to see the multiple camera shots with the rotating characters, the slow motion. We've seen it, and we started to see it implement in horror movies, in action movies, in just anything where a movie could utilize that type of technology, and you could see it in real time. And that's the luxury of us being as spoiled as we were. We got to watch this movie in 1999 when this movie was fresh to the world. We saw it with a fresh lens, fresh eyes. Because if you watch the movie now, you might have many people think like that's a great movie, and not and leave it at that, and not really understand just how impactful it was. And all the movies that they've seen today, whether it's superhero movies, whether it's any type of action movie, horror, a lot of those movies that they may have seen for the first time today that they consider to be iconic to them or amazing, take inspiration from the Matrix or movies like the Matrix. And that's a rarity. And I like to use the term spoiled because we were like, I always appreciate the fact that we grew up in a time that we did, to have movies like The Matrix for the first time in a theater before any of these things have been tested. And that movie will stand the test of time. It is always a luxury when you can watch a movie 15 years later, 25 years later, 30 years later, and know that it's still going to have the same gravitas and the impact on you it had when you watched it in the early 90s, if you will, or even before that. This is one of those movies that I can say honestly and confidently that, as you mentioned, this movie will hold up 100 years from now, 200 years from now. It will absolutely hold up. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to gas the movie up, but that's just how great it is as a whole. And as I mentioned off the air and talking with my other peers and friends and buddies, and like talking about the Matrix, and it opened up a conversation about perfect movies. And I was like, I consider the Matrix to be a perfect movie. And many people might ask you, well, what is a perfect movie? Like, is a perfect movie have to tackle every genre within the movie, every emotion within the movie? And to me, a perfect movie just has to be a movie that, in my opinion, sets out to achieve something and does it. We've often heard directors talk about a movie they've made and go, oh, I wish I would have done this, I wish I would have done that, I wanted to kind of hit this and I wasn't able to. You've heard actors talk about movies like, oh, we expected it to go this way and it went that way. The Matrix is one of those movies that I feel that, and they might tell you different, but that I feel like they achieved everything they wanted to achieve whether again it was a technical achievement, whether it was story, whether it was the actors, whatever the case may be. I think everything lined up perfectly. The stars aligned is the expression, where everything just lined up perfectly. And I know that it for me it's a fact, because again because of how much it changed the game. Everyone takes inspiration from the Matrix following that movie, and because of that it kind of showcases just how perfect it is. There's not many perfect movies out there. There's not a lot. You could probably consider movies like Jaws, Shawshank Redemption. Like there's a ton of movies that you're like, oh, application wise those movies are perfect, but it's a very short list, especially for someone like myself. And this is one of those movies, and I could watch it time and time again and never grow bored of it. And I will pass it on to other people who haven't seen it and hope that they enjoy it as much. And I always have to, preface with saying, just remember, guys, this came out in 1999 before all those other movies that you love today came out. So just take that in as well and understand and appreciate the art that was made for us on that date, because it's a rarity nowadays to be kind of surprised and taken back by new concepts nowadays, because we've seen so much. You hear all the time people say like there's no original movies anymore, we've seen it all. There are original movies, they just have a hard time finding them. But you hear that argument a lot, and I'm forever grateful that we got to be in a time where we got to see the Matrix for the first time, and watch everything after progress because of the Matrix.
Yeah, and to go along with what you said, a lot of people forget that yes, it became a franchise, but at the time, The Matrix was an original movie.
Yeah, yeah.
It was an original movie. It took influence from other genres. It took influence from other forms of media, which any great filmmaker will do. Everyone's got their influences.
Oh yeah.
But at the end of the day, it was original. And when you talk about original, like you've never seen a movie like The Matrix
Nope.
before. I
I've
challenge
never seen anything
anybody.
like that movie.
I've seen the concepts, of course. We've seen the concept of the machines taking over. We've seen the concept of an augmented reality. Yes, we've seen things like that before. We've seen the concept of slow motion, but we never saw bullet time. We never saw those 360 shots. This idea of the savior and such. Yes, we knew that concept, but not in this form. So it was just, for me, just that was the thing for me when I went to see this in the movie theater. I left going, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like that before in my life. In my life, and that's the thing that's always going to stick with me whenever I discuss the Matrix with people. It's a must watch. It's a must watch if you're a lover of film. So
yeah, this is one of those movies that like you said, if you're a lover of film, absolutely must watch.
Yeah, and we're gonna continue along here. We would go on to, the Matrix would go on to spawn some sequels, which would end up being a little divisive, as we should say, as opposed to the first movie. So, folks, that was the Panel Bros official breakdown for The Matrix. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe at the Panel Bros on YouTube, we would appreciate it. The more you do that, that helps our reach, so more people can see us and more people can listen to us. Also, if you could please leave a comment for us down below, letting us know how you felt about our breakdown. Let us know about your feelings about The Matrix. We didn't touch on this, but this is one of the greatest science fiction movies of all time. It's up there with Star Wars, Blade Runner, 2001: A Space Odyssey. How do you feel about that? The fact that, but here's the thing, not only is it one of the greatest science fiction movies of all time, no, the Matrix is just one of the greatest movies of all time, period.
Yeah, dude. Like, yeah, it's that good.
So
it's
please
that good.
let us know how you feel about that statement in the comments below. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchek saying, thank you for coming to the panel.